I knew we were gonna, okay, got it. Perfect, awesome, thanks. Sorry for interrupting, continue on, Emily.
Okay. Yeah, so anyway, that just to give you a little bit of a sense of my frame coming into this and how we got started. And then it was really starting to get going with this whole community-based model that we, as every startup does, you learn, you iterate, you realize what you were mistaken on, and you start to create something that's a little different than you envisioned, but even better. And I think where we're at now is very exciting as well, because what we've been learning is more about the opportunity with Grapevine in the workplace as people have been reaching out to us. So we're just learning. That's why this is such a great opportunity at this moment in our development, because I know we have a lot to learn from all of you, and we're really excited about the opportunity there. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and walk you through a presentation. Okay. Does that work? Can everyone see my screen now? Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so Grapevine, we are the solution for professionals with a purpose. We help you build team connection and engagement through social impact. This is not news to you, right? Connection and belonging are critical to employee happiness and productivity. I'm sure you've all seen these numbers. 56% increase in job performance, 50% reduction in turnover. These are real numbers and real money and time spent when your team is not feeling connected and doesn't feel a sense of belonging. And the good news is, not only do you know these numbers already, but you probably also know that social impact is a powerful tool to help accomplish this goal of creating more connection and belonging for your employees. The problem is that companies are still using outdated employee giving and matching programs that are largely ineffective. So you may have seen this as well if you've tried to implement something within your own company, that there's actually very low engagement rate in a lot of these employee giving, employee matching programs. And that leaves billions of dollars every year in donation matching funds that are unused in the US from companies. So what I'd like to present to you today is an alternative, and suggest you stop wasting your time with these old school programs and lean into something that's actually catching fire and is a movement here in the US and increasingly globally already with communities across the country and the world. Just to give you a little bit of a sense of what that looks like, here's a real giving circle in a real workplace and the kind of connection and excitement that people have when they participate in this model together. So what is this model? Giving circles essentially are affinity groups plus social impact. So it's bringing these two highly engaging, highly meaningful things together, right? It creates this fun, engaging, impactful group experience. These are all images of real giving circles, of real people, everyday people coming together, excited to connect with like-minded people, excited about the impact that they're creating, excited to learn about these incredible organizations and to feel like they're really doing something meaningful, not only for these communities that they care about, but also together with other people that they're in community with. So how does it work? It's a very simple concept, really. Donors come together in a group to connect with each other and to pool their donations. Okay, then it can vary, but typically what happens is members can then nominate nonprofits for the group to consider, or there can be expert nominations. So your company may already have nonprofits that you work with that you know are on a short list. Great, but there's some kind of consideration set of nonprofits for the group to consider, ultimately learn more about. So they have this ability to engage and learn and understand. Often that comes through an event where they get to hear 3 pitches from 3 different nonprofits on their incredible work. They get to ask questions, they get to discuss with their peers, and then there's a vote. They get to actually help decide where this big pool of money is going, and then they repeat that. So this is the part that's really exciting. It's not a one-off campaign. This is where we come together every quarter to do this, maybe every month, where we're pooling our money, we're learning about new organizations, we're learning more about each other and building those deeper connections as we're continuing to increase our impact over time. So giving circles, how do they empower the people that are in them? How is this going to give back to your team members? Well, one, it enables them to connect with other like-minded people. They may already be connected, but not know just how much they both care about the same cause or the same issue in their community, right? This also enables them to amplify their impact. if you're Bill Gates, it's easy to feel like you're making a difference. But if you don't have that much money, how can you still feel like you're making a meaningful difference when you're donating $100, $1,000 even? People can feel like it's a drop in the bucket. Well, if you pool your resources and your $100 with 100 other people now becomes 10,000, you can see how much more meaningful that is. And if you can leverage each other's knowledge and networks to find great organizations that are smaller, more underfunded, where a dollar goes further, which is often how this model works, you also are giving to organizations where you know that money is making a big difference. And you're getting the opportunity to really see that. You're getting an opportunity to hear from those organizations about that. And then finally, just being part of this group, being connected to your peers in this way, you have an opportunity to develop leadership skills if you're going to help facilitate this group, or your presentation skills if you're going to nominate a nonprofit and present it to the group. It gives you this great, valuable community-based learning experience as well through this positive pro-social model. The other thing to note about this, and I mentioned this briefly earlier, is that while we're just starting to think about Grapevine and giving circles in the workplace, this is a movement. So this is started in the early 1980s by everyday people who felt like they needed a better way to make a difference, who didn't feel like their $100 was valuable enough on its own, who didn't feel like they knew enough and had enough connection to the causes because they had full-time jobs and other things that they were doing to really know where to send money. And it's through this grassroots movement that we have now engaged over 150,000 people and moved more than $1.3 billion through giving circles across the country. That growth is expected to continue to accelerate, and we expect to move another $1 billion by the end of 2024. So this is also just part of the zeitgeist, I would say, and how people want to connect with each other and give back collectively. Grapevine launched in March of 2020. So we came into the scene, not in the early 1980s when this got started, but in March of 2020 to bring this movement online, to help those existing groups do their work, do it better, and also to make this a turnkey, easy solution for anyone. If I were to tell you to go and start a group from scratch and recruit 100 members and collect donations from each of them in your home and get that to the nonprofit, it's a lot of work. But it's a really, really engaging model. And so we've made it really simple for people. We've now moved over $21 million. We have 800 giving circles, 45,000 members. So this is a robust platform and solution that we've already built and proven out with the existing movement. And now we want to bring that to the workplace. And the reason for that is because actually the workplace has reached out to us. We have people joining giving circles asking us, how can I get my company involved? Can I launch a women's ERG giving circle for my women's ERG group? How can my company match the donations that we're doing? So this is really in response to that interest. And we're now making it easy for you, any of you, workplace leaders or affinity group leaders, to launch and engage your community with this online tool, tailored programming to support you in bringing exactly the information and the support that you need to your team for this, and also just access to this broader community of professionals with a purpose who are in giving circles already. Sorry, there we go. I think we skipped a couple. Okay. So anyway, so it's a mobile optimized site, and for our Giving Circle members and our leaders, we make it really easy to start a group. It takes just a couple of minutes, and it is that all-in-one solution. So you have the donation processing, the charitable grant receiving, the granting out to the nonprofits, and the transparent impact tracking. So all of the flow of funds, everything you need on that side. But you also have an online community space. So a place where your members can connect with each other, can nominate and vote on nonprofits, all of the things that they need to do either in between your in-person gatherings or in place of it, because maybe you have a team that is asynchronous or a team that is in many locations and you need this all to be online. And then we also have lots of tools to just share that out to make sure that other people are aware of the good work that your community is doing and invite other people to participate. Here are just a few of the companies that we've already worked with to help them with their employee engagement through giving circles. And here's how we're thinking about the different features and the way in which it can work for your team depending upon your needs, given that early engagement that we've had with those other companies. This is, I'll just say clearly, this is a proposal for your feedback. So this is one of those areas I'm really interested in your thoughts. What here is important, right? That platform hosting and basic tracking that I mentioned, access to the peer cohorts and the broader networks with a purpose that I mentioned across our platform, the ability for your company to provide matching donations to amplify the impact and, that brand halo that you're bringing to your team members through this model. So we see those as being part of that freemium, like very basic version. And then adding some of our strategy and planning support to you to help you create and set up a model that will be really successful for your community, as well as giving you more of a branding option and kind of dedicated company page with more advanced tracking so that you can really deliver and know you're delivering on your goals. So that's really in that premium version. And then finally, the last version that we've scoped out here is deeper integration with an existing donation processing partner that you might be using, like Benevity. We know is the most popular one. We've listed that here, but there are others you may be familiar with. So happy to explore that. And then added social impact programming and event support. Do you want to help your team members learn more about philanthropy, different theories and philosophies around that? Do you want more support on organizing, managing events? And then finally, more of a white label customized version. So would love your feedback on that. I know I just have one more slide and then we can pull these back up and get your thoughts on everything. But this is one area that we also would love your feedback on, which is really how to price this. Like, what kind of value do you see this bringing? And what kind of pricing model would make sense to you? So both, I think I'm interested here, both in the actual pricing, the numbers, but also the structure of it, right? These different approaches to it. And I've shared a few other donation processing partners that a lot of companies work with and tried to structure it in that way because it felt like that might make more sense to how you operate. But would really love your feedback on this part as well.
Hey, Emily, it
So we
looks
can
like
come back.
are you ready for questions yet? Beth Perlman has her hand up.
Yeah. Let's do it. That's perfect.
I'm always going to be the first one, Cindy.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me start by telling you my background, though. I was on the board of the United Way of Central Maryland, who was
Oh, great.
engaged, and we were trying to implement the United Way. I have a lot of background now in this. The United Way, which is Salesforce Philanthropy Cloud. Right. The biggest obstacle, and Benevity was our biggest competition. And I get what you're doing with the giving circles. It really does, it must integrate. Otherwise, a lot of companies, depending upon their size, already have something. So I'm going to tell you, you have to integrate, because to go in and sell this as standalone, you might not win that war.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest challenge for the United Way was that they had to pay Salesforce. United Way had to pay Salesforce, they were trying to figure out how to recoup from the company. It was like 5 cents a user per month for Salesforce, right?
Okay.
And that could be over $1 million a year to a charity. So they were trying, the biggest problem here is not how much you're going to charge, but who's going to pay it. In other words, so is it the company that's going to pay it? Are the people that are donating going to be the ones to pay it? Do you take a percentage of what's donated versus charging, a transaction, a fee? It's very complicated. And I have to tell you, I mean, the concept is fantastic. And like Carrie, I've been involved in a lot of these, crowdfunding kind of things. But getting somebody to pay for the licensing is really challenging. And I think that the other challenge really is with integration. It's not just a matter of integrating it, because Benevity already has a lot of this stuff in it. So it's not just about putting now on the transactional. It's like, how do you make it a seamless experience for the person? And each one, philanthropy, Salesforce Philanthropy Cloud's going to have one thing. Benevity is the most prevalent. Either that, or you say, let's stay away from the big companies that have already implemented these things, and let's go for the smaller and mid-sized companies where I can penetrate.
Right. Yeah, because that's the thing, right? Benevity has much more expensive pricing, so they've really captured the large company market, but there are
those
others
people that doing the United Way corporate giving kind of stuff, which everybody hates anyway, but it's that scale. And so maybe I would tell you, stay away from that and pick your market, which might be mid-size. So you say, I'm going to go from 500 million to 2 billion type companies. I don't know. I like the fact, like Bombas is there, ones with a mission would be absolutely much more likely to go, because you obviously need the momentum. but the licensing is going to be really, really, really tricky. And I almost wonder, I'm a pay for performance kind of girl. So I almost wonder is if you set it up as thresholds that if you raise a certain amount of money, you go, it's almost like if you increase or decrease, I don't know, depending upon how much money you can crowdfund.
Yeah, interesting. Right. So it's almost, I mean, the way we've set it up and a lot of those other providers in there set it up is there is a kind of upfront fee and a licensing annual fee that the company pays, but then there is a transaction fee that comes out of the donation amount from the donor. So, you're kind of charging both the donor and the company. But it sounds like if we could go all on the donor side, transaction, pay per performance, that would resonate more with you. Yeah.
I think so.
So Emily, there's a question from Rick Byer. He says companies often have a major charitable organization they support and ask employees to support, like the United Way. Money employees have for charitable giving is limited. Have you encountered any resistance from organizations in terms of the charitable organizations they want the organization and employees to support?
I wouldn't call it resistance so much, Rick, as focus. So yes, we've talked to some companies, especially those that have a social impact angle, that have a number of nonprofit grantee partners already that they vetted, that they like to support, right? One organization I'm thinking of has a list of 200. So we said to them, okay, great, you could still go through the same engaging model, but instead of letting your employees nominate any nonprofit, maybe you are the one that nominates the 3 or 5 for them to consider, and then they still get to learn more about it and ultimately vote on which to support. Or you could let them kind of nominate from your list. In other cases, I think there are a number of companies, a trend, and I'm actually curious if you've seen this or others here that I've heard of, where companies used to be much more focused with their giving with specific organizations and they had a CSR or a grants team that identified. And now there seems to be much more of an interest in letting employees be a part of that. And so this could also be a helpful way to maybe expand from that traditional model and say, hey, here are some that we support that you might consider, but also letting the employees nominate too. So a bit of a hybrid model.
Thank you. I think that makes sense.
Okay.
So Emily, I have a question. Can you share kind of the difference between a matching program, okay, where the employees get to decide where their match goes, they kind of have a say in that, versus what you're describing? Could you kind of give a kind of a contrast between the two, or how they'd work together?
Sure. Yeah. So I think a traditional matching program would say, hey, Cindy, whatever you want to donate to this year, we'll go ahead and match that. Just send us your donation receipt or donate through the Benevity platform, and we'll just add a match. So you, Cindy, are doing this on your own. This is what you care about. This is your organization. Great. Now, for me, if as a company, part of my goal with that matching program is for you to feel more connected to us as a company and to feel more positive about us. You might feel a bit more positive because we're giving you some money, but you're not really getting connection to other people in the company or, that kind of ability. And so instead of it being an individual experience, what I'm saying is you can still have a match, but you can be pooling your money with others and deciding as a group what to support collectively. So now I'm not just matching your $100 donation to this nonprofit, but maybe you nominated that nonprofit for your group, and now it's going to get $10,000 because you and your colleagues are supporting it along with the company match, right? And at the same time, you got this chance to explain to other people why you care about this cause, why you think this organization is great, and get to connect with those colleagues around what is really meaningful to you and learn from them what's really meaningful to them.
Thanks. That's great. Beth, you've got another question. Do you want to just ask it, or another idea?
Well, I know Robin has her hand up, so I didn't know.
Robin, where
Because
are
I
you?
already spoke, but I have
Robin.
another. I'm going to change the pricing model.
Okay. Robin.
But I liked what you said, Beth. But so Emily, I actually do love this. I hear all of Beth's feedback and understand certainly those hurdles and obstacles. But having worked in both super large organizations like a Home Depot that has, the United Ways and the large foundations and all of that, those hurdles certainly apply. but most recently coming from more along the lines of a $2.5 billion organization where we did have a foundation and it was run and managed, but it aligned with certain categories for our business, right? And we donated a certain amount of money to that. I can't tell you the number of times we had employees who would say, I'd really like to give to so-and-so, or I'd like to give to this. And we have a matching program. We have a great matching program. And to your point, we encouraged everybody to give and get their matches. And there was oftentimes a lot of money left on the table, and people might feel frustrated individually.
Mhm.
And I did see some of our internal employees almost create their own organic manual giving circles, right? You see this during the holidays, especially, right? With, go pick a person off the tree and we're trying to get all this money for one organization, and one person is bogged down with trying to get all that money and figure it out and make the contribution. I think there's certainly room for employees. And I do think that's right. I think knowing what your market is the starting point, but I definitely think there's a market for really easy use of giving circles, especially when it comes to things like ESG and affinity groups, because I know firsthand a lot of the affinity groups get very limited amounts of money. But
Yeah.
people are always willing to say, hey, if there's a book that we want everyone to read, we'd pool our money or do whatever. So I think that I actually do see a lot of benefit, and I like the ease of use. I think some of the matching program, and I'm guilty, some of the matching program is I like to give my money away, and I'm not always great about going back through the organization to get the matching contributions. So we're guilty of our own things. I did have a question about the freemium versus premium.
Mhm.
And my question is just a business one. Like, I'm assuming the freemium is free. Why free? Like,
Well,
why
yeah.
free instead of an uber low cost? Like, when I looked at the pricing model of your competitors, they all had costs. And I'm not saying bust the bank, but if you had even if it was a super low cost version that lets somebody think they're getting a steal and providing their entry level a really cheap mechanism, like Cindy said, as a CHRO, I would have said, hey, if it's not going to bust the bank and I can slip it into my budget, I'll give my employees an easy reason for them to give and feel good. And then we're going to use it in CorpCom because we're going to blow it up on our branding, and we're going to blow it up in our good news stories, and we're going to blow it up everywhere else.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Robin. First, like, so exciting to hear that it resonates with you on so many levels. And on the pricing, maybe I'll just pull that up and share it again so we are all looking at it. But that's really helpful feedback, because really what it comes down to is it's almost more what Beth was saying. It's like, who's paying for it? So it's not entirely free, but it's that the company isn't paying for it in this model. Because what we do right now, because we are a B2C platform now, right? And the way we monetize is we're a free platform, but people can leave us a tip when they go to make a donation. So there are processing fees that really are primarily just going to the processing partner. But then there's this tip option, which actually works pretty well for us to monetize. And then the one other thing here with this freemium version that I was expecting is if we do the matching donations, as I noted on this next slide, is doing this 10% in fees. So if your company said, okay, we're going to add a $10,000 matching gift, then 1,000 of that would come to us for processing that. And then the other 9,000 would go to the nonprofit. So that's how I got to that freemium. But it sounds like there's always that saying too in business, right? Where you should charge something so that people value it. So I wonder if it's almost working against us by calling it that, as opposed to like the low cost or entry level version with a little bit of a licensing fee.
I think maybe you have two models, because what you just talked about being B2C is almost more like GoFundMe, where if you do set up an individual contribution, they ask for a percentage so they can keep the site running, right? I think for Grapevine in that standpoint, I understand it. It makes sense, right? It gives people a free and easy way to bring people together for something they want to do as an individual, and then they can contribute to you. I think you should have a different, and maybe this is where Beth was going. I think you need a different model for B2B.
Mhm. That makes sense.
Because I think they're totally different. Because to me, if I were looking at it as a CHRO, it's a B2B tool. And what I'm making my decision on is what kind of tool am I purchasing and what purpose and ease of use does it provide to my employees?
Right. And does that include, Robin, then I'm assuming that you would not want to have a tip option. It's like, I don't want my employees to be asked to tip the platform. I should be covering this. So we get rid of the tip and you charge me instead.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could go either way. I mean, and I think companies are different. I know in the manufacturing environment, you may get this. Well, the company put in this tool for me to do these giving circles, and now I have to pay for the
You might have to
piece.
make
So
it an option that the company will
Mhm.
either say, go do it or don't. You know what I'm saying? It might be one
Correct.
of those things you might have to toggle.
Right.
Correct.
And I charge them a little bit more if we remove the tip option because we don't have that ability to monetize, but I can save them money if they don't have whatever, they don't have the budget for it, and we can add the tip to.
See, the problem is Benevity and like Philanthropy Cloud don't have the problem is they're missing out on the B2C market totally. And
Mhm.
you know, as I think about it, this might be your social media version of how to get like this might be your Instagram for giving so you create communities even with B2C customers, you know what I'm saying? And people want to find ways to give and be included. And I think this has a whole other launching. I think you have to almost think of it as two different things. There's the
Mhm.
B2B, it looks one way, and the B2C that can look totally different. And I think it can become a social movement, like an Instagram, like a TikTok or something, if it's done right.
And do you think companies would want that? I mean, that's one other thing I put here as the second piece, which is instead of this becoming your own walled garden, like you can have your own walled gardens of giving circles, but by working with Grapevine, you and your team members get access to this much broader community of professionals with a purpose. Other CTOs, we have a CTOs for gender equity. We have,
It
like,
could end up being a recruiting tool in all honesty as people start then forming their networks. Now, there might be
Right.
some regionalization or something like that. Um, Probably have to think it through a little, but there's an opportunity, but
Emily, Laura's had her hand up. So Laura,
Well, so first of all, because we talked about the pricing and sort of tweaking it, the first reaction I have is thank you for not putting up some sort of $9 PEPM. Because I feel like so many of these
And we
things.
have had that on one of our recent sessions.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. It's like, I pay ADP like $15 and you want me to double it for your one platform? So I feel like what I hear you doing is coming at this from a much better angle. Like, I think oftentimes entrepreneurs come at it from well, this is what it costs me to run my company, so I need you to pay me X in order to get it. And all these PEPM models add up and add up and add up. And especially, I think another good thing, and we go through this, I work for a company that has a couple of online training businesses. And I feel like they are, we're not thinking about how many people are actually going to use it, right? So there's the benefit of and in my role as a CHRO, sort of the corporate communications benefit of everybody saying, yeah, my company has a platform where we can go and give.
yeah.
But the actual number of people who are going to use it is smaller.
Yeah.
And so I like from that perspective, I think your pricing model is smart because it also doesn't put you as an entrepreneur in the position of trying to justify the number of people who use it.
That makes sense.
In my mind, right? It's like, well, we have training for manufacturing, and if 10 people out of the 100 people in the plant use it, it doesn't mean it's not valuable.
Mhm.
Right? Like, those 10 people really needed that training. It doesn't require you to have everyone do it. And so
Right.
I think that's a good thing. And I just wanted to give that feedback. Also, a question, how are you thinking about the enterprise price? So maybe you were thinking PEPM and now you're not, but well, I'm not going to do that.
You know, I honestly, the enterprise price, I don't know, except I was going to look at some of these other players, Deed, Benevity, Cyber Grants, who have, I know Deed tends to be more mid-market, and Benevity tends, and Cyber Grants tend to be more the larger companies, right? So I was just looking at their pricing models and thinking, if we customize this a bit more, we add some more value to these companies. And maybe it's not a PE, maybe it's not a pricing that's on a per user, but it's more like, how big is your company? How many people are in your company, or what's your annual revenue? Laura, obviously I haven't thought it all through yet. Would
That's
love
great.
but trying to just think about those bigger companies and how I know they pay more. And I've seen pricing around that, like not just usage, but around how big is the company to scale it.
Well, and obviously I'm a focus group of one, so we get feedback from everybody else, but that PEPM thing is like, really? Again?
Well, the other thing that's so nice about what you just shared too, Laura, that I'm trying to tailor this toward is what your ultimate goals are not to just check the box to have a giving platform. I mean, maybe for some it is, but the problem, a lot of you have that already, right? That's not the problem we're trying to solve. The problem is there's very low engagement, and it's not actually helping you create that sense of belonging and connection. So
Community.
let us, community, right? And so on that pay per performance thing, Beth, you're talking about, like, let's not base this on the number of people on it who aren't using it. You know, let's try and base it more on, yeah, there are some real setup fees perhaps that we'd have to accommodate, but then can we charge on distribution fees, donation matching fees, like actual activity?
Or I was thinking, like, let's reverse this a little, because like part of the challenge is I might have a specific interest, but I might not know the charities or the nonprofits out there.
Yeah.
So what if we charge, and listen, there has to be a vetting process and there has to be of a certain size, but you let them pay you to put like to maybe you need a section of these are all the nonprofits that meet your criteria, but each of the ones that are up there are actually contributing. So it's the advertising model, but
Yeah.
there has to be some controls, because you can't turn into this advertising free for all, you know, whatever, but maybe they end up paying for it because they benefit from it.
Well,
Yeah.
and that was the other thing. So I serve on a couple of nonprofit boards, and one of ours, you know, there are rating services for charities, right? So I've gone on them enough to do what I was asked and put a nice note about the ones that I serve on. I don't know if they have any of this. And
Well, you have to have a
so,
certain ratio, like of expense to, you know, whatever.
Right, it
I mean,
measures
and
all
this
those
could be-
things,
It
but
could be Glassdoor, I think it could be, but yeah.
no, but I just wonder about if those platforms don't have this sort of thing, if that's a partnership. Because then you'd have some of those things that Beth is talking about, but.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. We have lots of nonprofits wanting to get in front of our community of 45,000 donors, you know, and we also have lots of foundations and just people who consider themselves experts on different cause areas, I don't just mean people, I mean subject matter experts, right? Foundations like who want to tell our donors what they should give to, you know what I mean? Like, and not in like, this is what you should give to, but in an educational way, like, let me help educate them and provide guidance. And at the same time, further my own work for this cause. So I think there's a big opportunity there, Beth. I know there is.
Become the Shark Tank. So if I'm into whatever, social justice, blah, 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 there's 3 companies, you can open, that's what I'm saying. You can become the TikTok of like, you know, whereas now they're always having a bake off, and then the group can afterwards decide where they want to spend their money, you know?
Right. Yeah. And the nonprofits pay something to enter, or maybe there's just a big distribution fee. So if you enter, it's free, but when you get the funds of the 10,000, 2% of that or 10% of that or whatever it is comes to Grapevine before you receive the remaining.
And this might not be a core product, but I think it'll help to paint a vision for when they say, why should I go with Grapevine? Well, this is only the beginning. You know, there is engagement. Employee engagement's important, right? So it's not just the community, but it's also probably engaging. Like in Benevity, you can track how many hours you work with an organization, which the company counts. So they don't want to just give money. They also want to see that you're putting your time. Some companies give you a day off, that you get 8 hours. They want you to go work at one of these nonprofits, right? And that'll also help if you can figure out, you know, how to build that engagement, not just the community building, but the engagement with the nonprofit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that often does come out of these groups, actually. So we could build in some tracking feature where people learn about nonprofits because you're being introduced to 3 or 5 in this event. How cool. You find one that really resonates with you, whether or not they even got the big grant from the whole group. Now you've been introduced to this group and you might go on to become a direct donor or volunteer. We have seen there's some really great research around how giving circles are really great on-ramp for people into a broader philanthropic, life, really, whether they're just getting started and this is a like fun, low anxiety way. Who wants to go get a philanthropic advisor when you're just getting started? Like that feels weird, or you're someone who has been giving, but to a few things and you'd really like to learn more. It's a really kind of nice, easy way to do that. And then get involved in bigger ways, join boards, all of that stuff later on. There's some really good research behind how giving circles help with that.
And one of the things to jump in really quickly, because there are a couple like product offerings here. One is many corporations already have the 10 philanthropies that are tied directly to their business values. And as some mechanism allowing, that additional matching or whatever coming from the 10 organizations where you have these giving circles, A, learn more about them, and then B, figuring out the allocation that they want to do in addition. So there's already a way tying it directly to the company's values on organizations that they're already, so creating some of that stickiness and control for the employees on voting specifically, as well as that other approach, which is having them highlight some of the organizations that they care about. And really the purpose again is for building community. What ways now in the war for talent and knowing that community and values are number one in terms of stickiness for companies today, like building out that community and that as a tool to be able to do it. And everything that y'all said is definitely helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So Carrie, hey, the poll questions that I had thought about asking, I don't know that they're all that relevant. I mean, it's clear that everybody understands what Grapevine will do. I guess my question to you, Carrie, and you, Emily, what are some of the questions that you would like to ask or have them answer for you that would be helpful, Emily, that haven't already been answered or asked?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think one, there are several, sorry, I'm trying to think. So I guess one is like, who should I be selling into at a company? Is it the CHRO? Is it reaching out to ERG leaders directly or DEI leaders? Like what do you think is who's the best person at a company? And then, maybe that's the first place to start. Maybe that changes over time. Like maybe initially to get our foot in the door, it's going through ERG leaders and then expanding from there to more of the company HR leaders. But curious, any thoughts on that?
Emily, I think it would depend. This is Robin. I think because there's so many uses for it. So I think corporate communications a lot of times manages a lot of that. I know in my organization, we managed a lot of the giving through Corp Com, and then we managed a lot of the giving through HR.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most of the ERGs, you wouldn't go directly to them because they're normally overseen by executives throughout the organization, which then kind of get coaching or guidance from the CHRO or the chief diversity officer. It just depends. But I would see 2 entry points, and I'm sure there's others, but I would see 2 entry points as corporate communications or corporate affairs and HR.
Great.
I agree. I was going to say the same thing. It would take a little time, but learning a little bit about each company, I think would be important, just because if you go in the wrong door, sometimes the door can close and it may not have been the right door. So, I think just trying to get a feel for who oversees that at the company before you go in would be important.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And always having a champion, an ambassador, if you can get to it, a senior executive that kind of spoon feeds it into one of those groups. So
absolutely.
Always...
Yeah.
I would also tell you, to Erica's point, if you go online and some of the smaller companies won't have this, but some of the publicly traded, 1 to 3 billion they'll have like a sustainability report.
Mhm.
And in it, it outlines most all of them outline their philanthropy and their giving philosophy. And it would give you some insight into, like, I know our previous one, we outlined the organizations that fell in line with our beliefs that the foundation gave to. And I think a lot of them do outline that and would give you some sense. The smaller companies would be harder, but.
Great. And does that feel like the right segment to go after here initially, at least the $1 to $3 billion companies that have some form of giving back already?
I wouldn't limit yourself there. I mean, I just talked to, in the healthcare services industry, I just talked to an organization that's much smaller. They're in the, hundreds of millions, and they have a really philanthropic CEO. And I don't think the smaller organizations have formalized giving, but I think a lot of them encourage their employees to be philanthropic or figure out ways they can give. And to me, this would give a mechanism that allowed them to do that, or even create their own giving circle, right? If I was a CEO of a small company and didn't have a foundation or anything, but knew we wanted to give back, what a great way for me as a CEO to create a giving circle for the company. And knowing we'd be able to say as an organization or a small team, look at what we just did for, the Psychiatry Association, because our product is manufactured for them, or whatever.
Great. Okay.
Emily, is this US solution or is it global?
It's US at this point, although we work with a couple of partners, CAF America and Global Giving. We're not officially integrated, but people can donate internationally through them, essentially. We do have a plan to expand globally. The movement certainly has already, just not there yet. But even now, if someone said like, oh, we have to be able to give globally, we could set up giving circles where money passes through one of these other partners in order to get to those international nonprofits. That's sort of what CAF and Global Giving do.
I have a couple, just when you say integration, I always think payroll integration. Is this completely standalone from payroll systems where employees are making the donation on a separate site kind of thing? Or have you ever thought about integrating with payroll systems where an employee could just set it up as a part of their deductions?
Yeah, so we've thought about that. We have not done that at this point, Erica, but that Benevity, for example, integrates with payroll, right? So they'll take money out that from paychecks and then move it to nonprofits. And what we can do is with this integration, just even a lightweight integration available now with Benevity, is people can go into their Benevity portal and say, oh, I'm going to donate $100 to the Grapevine Giving Foundation for this project, which is my company's giving circle. So, Company X giving circle. So that's already there. So if you as a company set up a giving circle with us, we would have it show up in the Benevity portal to where your employees would just do that. They follow the same process, and then they'd have access still to the giving circle on the Grapevine platform with all of the additional communication, collaboration tools and all of that. But the donation itself could come through your existing system.
Okay.
I'm wondering how big of a deal breaker you think that is, like integrating with payroll providers directly versus through an existing donation processing tool like Benevity.
I think it depends on the company size. For a company our size who does not have a Benevity type platform, payroll integration would be extremely beneficial. But if other larger companies already have those platforms in place, it probably doesn't make sense. And even from pricing structure, I think as I was thinking kind of through Laura's comments too about the per employee, while I don't love that structure either, I also know for small to mid-sized companies, they don't necessarily want to pay there's some appeal to that just because they don't necessarily want to pay for employees who aren't participating, or even an entry level type payment structure where maybe you start out paying for employees who are participating and see what that looks like, and it maybe ebbs and flows over time, which has challenges. But I think for small to mid-sized companies, considering different ways to connect with payroll systems may be helpful just for ease of rolling it out. And then also just different pay structures. Again, just anytime you say it's going to cost this amount of money, the owner of a large or a smaller company is going to say that, they're going to look at that as a percentage of their profit and how that works. So just my suggestions.
It looks like, Mary, I don't know if your question's been answered. It's around integration and what other kind of integrations required. Did you feel like it got answered?
Yeah, I think so. It sounds like it's really pretty optional, and it can be pretty much a standalone solution. To be quite frank, I think some of this employees want a little anonymity. I mean, based on what I've seen too, they want some anonymity and where they're contributing. So I think in some organizations, it'd be better to not have integration, just in terms of getting it off the ground. At least that's been some of my experience with optional employee giving programs. So I just wanted to make sure there wasn't more complexity in integration required.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a standalone now, right? So any of you could right now go to grapevine.org and start a giving circle for your team or your ERG or whatever. And then just invite those people in by emailing them or connecting, taking the URL, take the QR code that we give you to an event and inviting people that way. It's actually, Mary, really interesting too, because one of the thoughts that I've had around this is, should we not go straight to the HR leads or whoever, the workplace leaders directly, but instead try and get the employees to engage, kind of like Slack did, right? Like all the teams started using Slack because employees started using it. And then it suddenly became something where then the company had to say, okay, wait, how do we get, our team is using this, we need more access, we need to like formalize this. And so it became more of a bottoms up approach. And we're already seeing that, right? We have company alumni groups forming on the platform that are giving back together. We have teams forming giving circles, and then people connecting. So like, I think I mentioned earlier, CTOs for gender equity, so we're getting lots of professionals joining across companies as well. So I'm curious if you have thoughts on that approach.
Yeah. Well, tangentially related to what Mary just asked about, what sort of cybersecurity issues do you have with your system, if any?
We get credit card testing every once in a while, but that's been the only thing. We work with Stripe, and best-in-class payment processor secures everything for us and helps navigate all of that for us. So we've had no issues on cybersecurity other than, like I said, the occasional credit card tester, which typically gets ousted from the Stripe program that they have in place.
And then, by the way, just adding on to kind of one of the prior points, when Overton did it, we brought our limited partners. So I could also see an incredible opportunity from an ESG perspective involving clients. And that's exactly what we did for Overton. And it was as easy as it gets to set up. So as far as the onboarding, et cetera, it's pretty self-explanatory as well.
Well, it's a really interesting point, Carrie, because a couple of the companies, the socially minded companies, so I think someone pointed out Bombas is on our slide, and some others that we've talked to, they seem particularly interested in this ability for this to not just be embedded internally, but be a way that their team can connect with their customers through these shared values. Some of them actually thinking about then bringing that together in person, because they have retail stores across the country. So they're going to do in-person events, but then having the actual circle online place where they can connect, and that being the place where they can pool funds and all of that. So I think it depends on the company, but that's been an interesting thing to hear.
Yeah, I work with a guy on one of the boards that I'm on who said that this year his company, rather than sending out the obligatory coffee mug, they bought a goat on behalf of their clients or whatever. And he said they have never gotten so much response from the thing they gave out as the holiday gift as giving. So the company gave on behalf of their clients, and they were overwhelmed with people writing back to thank them. And so that's actually a really cool way to flip it over.
Love that.
It's a great idea. And I think, Emily, I told you that exactly. Another fund sent me a card that said we donated X amount. What a great exercise for a company to do. Hey, we have these organizations. Which one do you want to give it to? So it's a great point, Laura.
And Emily, you pointed Oh, go ahead, Cindy.
Well, I was just gonna say, then your answer to your point in the organization where you go in and sell this, gosh, it could be sales too, right? I mean, it sounds like from this discussion, there's a lot of different points. Sorry, Robin, I wanted to make sure that I kind of understood that.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Cindy, and I mean, there's a lot of tentacles to this that you could go, and I
Yes.
think the key is gonna be just making sure you prioritize instead of just shotgunning. But
Yeah,
one of the things you just said that I think is really enticing, and Beth brought this up too, when she talked about, you know, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or anything else. When you talk about the fact that some of these companies, that it's kind of grown from people doing it themselves and bringing it in. I mean, I foresee you having an opportunity that if you put your time and focus and branding on advertising in that fashion, you get this thing to go viral. And then you won't have to do a lot of the lift because people will know what it is. They'll get to choose if they use it, especially if the interface is one in that you set up the pricing where it's a percentage of the giving, right? That's very similar to GoFundMe and some of the others, but these could totally go viral, and anybody, whether it's a company or a user, could set it up and just take it. Like, I love the idea. I wrote down grapevine.org because I had no idea I could just go on and do this. And I think of all the various things that I give to, and I can't wait to do some type of giving circle and get other people involved in it. I think you've got a viral opportunity that would organically make this do what you want it to do.
Awesome. Thank you, Robin. Yeah, I've thought about that too. It's like, it's already kind of starting to happen, you know, and so we want to keep putting fuel on that fire. And part of it is just figuring out how to do that effectively with the workplace.
so Carrie, we've got about 1 minute.
Yeah.
Oh, and Jeff Mike, bye. He had to drop. We got about
Yeah.
1 minute. So you want to wrap up?
Yeah, so I mean, look, thank you everyone for your feedback. Again, the goal of this was to get your feedback. It wasn't obvious. We're going to send a questionnaire around, but like, you know, similar to with the board positioning, you know, Emily definitely would love advisors, mentors as she's building this out. So if any of you obviously want to get partnered and spend some more time as she flushes it out, we'd of course appreciate it. Again, it's also to present y'all some interesting technologies that are going on right now in the market, and obviously community, social impact, ESG, the new kind of regulatory environment around it does make it prime for bringing it to the corporate environment. So Emily, thank you so much for being here. Thank you everyone for taking your time. Cindy and I will definitely follow up with those feedback forms, and we'll obviously continue to keep you posted on how this evolves. So.
Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate all your feedback and discussion.
Thank you.
everyone.
Talk soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.